everyone, and welcome back to We're Watching Star Trek, the original series. As always, I am Brandon, and as always, I'm here with Paul.
Yo, giddy up. We're here again for another episode. Come along for the ride.
And we're still here with Dan, and I'm just ignoring the giddy-ups at this point.
No, never.
Well, since Paul keeps stealing my giddy-ups, I guess I'll just say howdy.
No, giddy up is it for now on.
Yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and dive right into this. We're watching Season 1, Episode 16, the Galileo 7. We're about halfway through the first season. It seems like we've been going at this forever, like just watching it, one episode a week is kind of torturous, but, we're getting there. But the original air date for this one was January 12th, 1967. And it opened up with the Enterprise flying through space on a mission to deliver some supplies to Colony Beta 6, which they seem to do a lot of that. Like they're mostly either just like flying around aimlessly or they're doing like a supply run for some reason or visiting a prison.
I think it's their mission, right? Just to explore and because it's a scientific ship. It's a scientific mission, I believe, right?
Right.
To just explore new worlds and then bring supplies, help people out. So I assume they're always on a light mission of doing that.
Yeah. And occasionally they just get to be like space truckers. So, so Kirk and McCoy are talking about the void of space in front of them because apparently there's just like nothing in front of them, like their scanners aren't picking up anything, and they're just like having this weird conversation comparing it to the deserts on Earth, and they get like really oddly nostalgic about it, like they just love the desert for some reason.
I mean, if you hate water, the desert's where it's at.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's a little reference in there where he mentions 900 light years specifically. Well, I hate that word. Just so you notice him saying that, and then later on, it comes full circle, and a little bit later in the episode. I just think that was something they kind of subtly put in there that nobody really noticed as it was talking.
Yeah, so they're like a good ways away from Earth at this point.
Yeah.
But Spock overhears this discussion, and he comes over and gives the definition of a desert because, he's a party animal and loves to, get in that good conversation. Yeah. And he doesn't understand their nostalgia for the desert, which, I mean, I don't either. I've never been to a desert, but I don't think I would like to because I do like water, and I don't like cooking alive, so.
Hey, man.
Not that I've tried
everything's trying to kill you in the desert on top of it.
Yeah.
I would love to go to the desert, like in Afghanistan or something, like in the middle of the desert, and just see what's out there. Especially after watching the show Moon Knight, I really want to go down there and look at because they're the sphinxes in the desert, right? The sphinx and things like that, pyramids.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind going to see those
things. You can go to the beach to see sand.
No, whoa! Did you compare a pyramid to sand? No.
Well, I'm just comparing the desert sand to the sand on the beach.
No, I'm talking about going to visit the big things there, the pyramids and the Sphinx and things like that. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating.
You know who else didn't like sand?
You sound like Anakin from Star Wars just now, sir, when he said that. I know my nerd stuff. Don't play me. Quote. Don't play me, sir.
I would like to go visit things like the pyramids and all that, but I don't think I would have like a fondness for just the desert. Like it'd be cool to see, but just the once.
You need to start watching more nature channels, man. Watch Nature Channel in the desert. There's a lot of stuff going out there. It's really cool looking. I promise you that.
I don't know. Every nature show I watch of people in the desert, like Bear Grylls, he's always drinking his piss.
Oh,
okay, that sounds like a great time.
Change the channel then, man. Change the channel.
Oh, we're already off to a great start.
5 minutes in, we're talking about deserts.
About drinking pee.
Drinking pee. Oh, my God.
So McCoy, he's not surprised that Spock doesn't understand what's going on, and he says he can't imagine a mirage ever disturbing Spock's mathematically perfect brainwaves, and Spock is just like very seriously, he's just like, "Thank you," and just leaves. He just walks away.
It's just funny. It was like
humans have a weird way of complimenting me.
He breaks into conversations to say that he doesn't understand it, and then McCoy cracks a joke, and then he leaves. Like that's their whole formula. That's all they ever do.
I like it.
Yeah. So they're 8 days away from their destination and delivering those supplies, and Spock says that he's picking up a sizable space displacement reading. So the navigator, or I don't actually know, he's the navigator because Sulu's helm. Okay, so the navigator, he verifies a displacement, which we have a new navigator like every episode, and I really just kind of want somebody permanent there because I'm tired of learning the names of people we never see again.
The human is also new in this episode.
Yeah, new yeomans. Yep.
I noted that it was different helmet immediately. Different helmet.
And every time.
I thought, oh, he dead.
Yeah, he's screwed.
Dude, I truly thought he was gonna die immediately as soon as I saw he was a different helmet.
Yeah, and so they put this space displacement thing up on the screen, and it's a planet, and Spock is a little bit confused as to why it's not in their records. Which obviously we know, from Star Wars that if there's a planet missing, that's because somebody got rid of it. That little kid taught us that.
Yep.
Before Anakin chopped him down.
Too soon.
So Kirk's like, hey, we don't have time to investigate this. And he asks Uhura to notify the Discovery on the subspace radio, but she can't get a signal out due to the strong interference, which is likely caused by the planet's iron-rich body. So Kirk's like, all right, let's get out of the range of the disruption, and we'll try that again. And he orders Sulu to make an adjustment to their heading. And then Sulu's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And for some reason, he stands up, and then he just disappears, just straight disappears into thin air.
He did some instant transmission.
Yeah, he's like, I'm tired of this. I'm out of here. So Kirk then runs over to where Sulu was standing, and he disappears as well. And then we get this shot of Spock ordering full reverse power, just yelling it, oddly enough for him. And then we go to the show opening. So a pretty interesting way to open up, just people just disappearing.
Honestly, I was in it. As soon as that happened, I was like, okay, I'm in. I said, this might be an amazing episode. I
it was very sudden.
Yeah.
And look how cool Spock was under the pressure of that just happening. So,
yeah.
We dogged on him last week, but he did a pretty good job this week.
Captain Spock said, never again.
We're full Captain Spock again.
Nah, I'm over Captain Spock. He's always making the worst decisions. This episode gave him justice, by the way. I want to clarify that before I make fun of him again. But, the last episode was just so bad and egregious that this is just sure, whatever.
He had an off day. Come on, give him a break.
Yeah.
He had a lot of off moments that episode. A lot of them.
Yeah, he was just having a bad day.
You all have them.
He tried to kill everybody. He wanted to kill everybody. He was going to
leave. He didn't try to kill him. He tried to leave them to die. There's a difference.
Oh, there's a difference, people. Remember that.
I'll come back for you.
He just said there's a difference, just so you know. If I don't, I don't have to save you. Batman quote.
Leaving them does not guarantee that they're going to die. Just increases the odds.
I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you either.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Get out of here.
So we get back from the commercial, and Spock is giving a ship's log explaining that the ship has been placed on red alert and that they can't find Sulu or Kirk anywhere. And Scotty is on the bridge basically saying, hey, we looked everywhere, and, if they're not down on that planet, then they are nowhere. So their instruments, they're not picking up any life forms on the surface of the planet. And the navigator, who now gets a name, is DeSalle, requests to transport to the planet's surface and start a search. He's like, you screw this sitting around stuff. Let's go down there and, let's just go. He's just a man of action. Which, oddly enough, all of the helmsmen are. They're always, trigger happy, men of action.
Yeah, but I think it's aren't the helmsmen ones that shoot the missiles too? They're the one that press the button?
I think he is the guy for that. Yeah,
I'm thinking maybe they're the grunts of the space exploration team. Like Star Trek. Maybe they're the people who do the hard lifting and a lot of fighting and things like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and they just default all go no talking let's just go.
Yeah, they're the helmets, so they're ready to fight at all times.
Yeah, so McCoy agrees to that. He's like, yeah, we should probably go down there and have a search. But Spock, is channeling himself from the last episode. And he's like, look, I'm the one in charge, and it's my decision to make. And he asks this guy Yeager about the geophysical findings on the surface of the planet. And Yeager, never one to spoil the fun, is like, well, there's no soil or vegetation, and it's really fucking hot, and there's a toxic atmosphere that is swept over by tornadic storms, and it's just also constant, volcanic eruptions. So basically just it's hell. It just sucks. So
that doesn't sound like a fun time to you?
Yeah, he's just it's, scariest place imaginable.
Nah, Spock was like, yeah, let's go visit that place. Logically, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, but Spock wants to know, he's like, how long can, two unprotected people survive on that planet? And Yeager's like, not very long. So, super scientific answer.
Which is weird, because I thought Spock would have been like, I need an exact time. I thought Spock would have said something about that. That's one thing I noticed in that situation where I was like, Why didn't Spock give him crap for his answer? Because it wasn't a straight answer. It was like open ended. I thought maybe
Yeah,
I think maybe they missed the opportunity to clarify like a Spock moment because that really would have made sense. You know what I'm saying?
If he would have gave an answer, it probably would have just been an educated guess, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
but Spock would have took it because Spock would refer to his expertise because logically
Well,
like Spock is the smartest everybody and everything. So when he asked him the question, he needed the answer. So once the guy starts saying
well,
the answer, whatever the answer he says, Spock's going to take it because he knows he's the expert. Spock's not.
didn't they say there was no oxygen on the planet?
no, just that it was like a toxic atmosphere.
Yeah, but I'm particularly talking about just the time thing itself. He didn't say an exact time. I think that's kind of weird
Yeah,
for Spock
yeah.
not to
Jaeger's
say
like,
something.
they can maybe live 10 minutes, and Spock's like, all right, well, it's been 11. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
Just like leave.
yeah. It's very like I know it's something like subtle, and I'm being me sometimes, but I think that's very weird that they didn't write him responding back with the exact time when that's everything Spock is logical. So
Yeah.
I mean,
He could be like, well, they're dead already.
Yeah. Just let's get out of here.
All right,
But yeah.
They're actually over there floating in space. Don't you see them?
Yeah. Would they even bother to bring them back at that point? And just, if Spock's in charge, probably not.
he needs the bodies.
Don't they shoot the bodies off into space when they die?
We haven't seen one yet.
Yeah, despite the fact that so many people have died, we don't really know what they do when they die on the ship.
Yeah, we haven't seen the military funeral yet. We've seen the funerals on the planets, but we've never seen one on the ship yet, which would be interesting when it happens.
Yeah, so Uhura gets a text-based message from the planet's surface and pops up on the screen. It's just like, hey, LOL. No, it's just like a simple greeting. And Spock tells her to send a message back, requesting the sender to identify themselves. And then they just like send back an unsolicited dick pic. And, that's just the end of the episode. The response I get back is hip hip hooray tally ho, and hearing Spock say tally ho is fan-fucking-tastic. Tally ho.
He's like, I think that's how you say it.
Yeah. So of course they're obviously not very sure what's going on, and McCoy is like, well, at least we know that there's life on the planet now. And Spock's like, all right, well, let's get the transporter room ready. And Scotty, immediately jumps in. He's like, hey, I want to be part of the search party. And Spock says, no. He says, you and I, we cannot be, like, we're too important to be spared here. And then he orders DeSalle and Yeager and McCoy to equip the landing party and prepare for transport, which is real fucked up because he's like,
well, they
you and I
became
are
best
too
friends
important.
in last week's episode.
They did, and he's like, you and I, we're too important to be spared, but these other dudes, fuck them. Like, let's send them. Like McCoy, he's replaceable.
Scotty had my back, so I got his back.
This time I got to defend Spock. This time I hate defending him this time, but this is exactly what I would said. Like I get his point. Everything made sense. Look, if we're too knowledgeable. See, I didn't take it as in like he was like, oh, we're more important than them. I took it as we have too much knowledge, and nobody else can do what we do. Because
McCoy is the fucking ship's head surgeon, for God's sake.
Like, I'll sacrifice
he's
the surgeon.
But doctors are replaceable though. There are probably other guys on that ship with his expertise.
So send one of the other doctors. I wouldn't send the head surgeon.
I get what you're saying. I get your point. I get what you're saying. I just think that there's probably
even though Kirk does that a lot also.
Yeah, he does. They actually do really risk like the heads of their departments all the time, which is I feel like it's like bad protocol.
Well, the captain.
Maybe that's why there's such a high turnover rate with all the new characters constantly coming in. Like, whoa, they don't know how to run shit on this ship.
Yeah, like we're getting out of here.
Get out of here.
Just send the new navigator and the next 6 that you were going to replace him with, and if you lose them, no big fucking deal because you apparently have like infinite number in a closet somewhere, and every time you lose one, you just grab them. So just like send all those ones.
Have we seen any other doctors?
There's always someone that wants to jump on as soon as they leave to take over navigation.
Have we seen any other doctors on the show yet besides Bones? Like
we've seen
a couple of them.
Helen, she was a nurse, but
yeah, I'm talking about like, on the Enterprise itself, like one of the characters. Like I only see him in the office, right? I don't see anybody else in the doctor's office. Just him.
Yeah, I don't know if we've seen any other medical doctors. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna start looking for that now.
Well, if he's the only one, they're really playing risky business.
I don't know if he's the only one. That's why I'm curious now. There must be more than one doctor, or he wouldn't be sent it. I just don't think. I've never seen the other ones. That's why I'm curious.
Yeah, like we've seen people helping out, but you have to assume. I mean, one of them had to have been a doctor, right? Like we've just seen background characters doing stuff in the sickbay and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go to the transporter room, and Uhura calls to say that they haven't received any more messages, but that they've pinpointed where the messages that they did receive were coming from. Boy, I really choked on that word, didn't I? But Spock orders the transporter team to contact the ship when they arrive. And I'm just looking here, and like they have like some pretty. They're actually wearing some different gear for going to the planet for once. Like they have an oxygen mask because the the environment's just trash, but they have no heat protection. They're just going down in like their uniform. It's in like their sweaters, which is really weird. But like I don't know what you could wear to protect yourself from the heat. But
exactly what you're about to say about the reference, real quick. They don't have suits on, man. They don't have suits on. I thought it was very weird because they didn't identify if they can, like, they got their skin is exposed.
Yeah,
they don't have suits on. I find that very, I don't know. I just weird. I noticed it.
Yeah, there's like there's constant tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, and the air is toxic, and they're just like, oh, so I can just like wear a t-shirt then, and that's just what they do.
Yep, weird.
So, they do beam down to the surface, and they find themselves in an area that's just, like, got a bunch of trees, so they're back in Ohio. And McCoy points out, he's like, hey, there are no storms, almost like he's disappointed. He's like, I'm not getting murdered by a tornado right now. Like, this is kind of bullshit. It's the old bait and switch.
Man, I wanted to see a volcano go off.
Yeah, he wanted to experience it firsthand. And Yeager just does a quick scan and says that the atmosphere is exactly the same as the one on Earth, and he just takes off his mask. So he's like, yeah, it's cool, like, we can breathe in this. Which is, I guess, why they weren't wearing any gear, because the story said that there was no point, so they're just going to have to take it right back off. And so DeSalle, he tries to call the Enterprise, but he can't get through. And then for some reason, like, the other people try, like, this, like, they don't believe that he can't do it. Or, like, they believe that he can't. He's just like, this guy's fucking dumb. Like, he can't use it.
They're like, his cell phone's not getting the signal.
Like his shit is broken, and there isn't. Or, like, the thing is, they did it at the same time too. It was very off-putting.
They think he's just like incompetent and he can't use a communicator.
Yeah, like, oh, let's pull ours out too. Like, okay, your phone work? No.
Yeah. So, they get the same result, and then they try to use a laser beacon that they had brought to signal to the Enterprise where they are, and that doesn't work either. So DeSalle's like, all right, now I'm gonna go and find some open ground because maybe these trees are blocking the signal or whatever. And then he finds what appears to be like a castle, like a castle gate. So they go up to this big front door, like they go up some stairs and go to the castle front door, and they go inside, and there's just like basically it's just a living room decorated with like medieval items and all that. And they they take a couple steps in, and then they get startled by like a decorative salt vampire, which was a really fucking cool callback to the Man Trap.
Yeah,
like it was pretty cool to see one of those again. But yeah, they just, they go in, they see Kirk and Sulu, and they're frozen in place on this little stand. And McCoy scans them and says that he's not getting a reading at all, and that they're like waxwork figures. And suddenly the front door slams shut, and a harpsichord starts playing. And for some reason, this gave me like odd Scooby-Doo vibes. like McCoy's like, ruh-roh. And then they just have to like solve the mystery of what's going on. And then I was wondering, like, who would be, the character, like, who would be the cast of Scooby-Doo? Like, what Star Trek person would be Shaggy?
Oh.
Like, could you see McCoy? McCoy's in there. He's like, zoinks.
Zoinks.
Yeah. You're right. It's probably Bones.
Yeah. And Kirk's got to be Fred.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Kirk's got to be Fred. And Janice would have to be, what is it, Daphne? And Kirk's like, well, why don't you guys go investigate? And, Janice and I are going to go over here and investigate.
And Spock will have to be Thelma.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Holy shit. I didn't even think of that.
Who's going to be Scooby-Doo?
Oh, shit.
Oh, God, Scotty.
Any of the characters that are useless that seem to
yeah.
Pop in?
Oh, now I want that.
No, Scooby's a yeoman. Scooby has to be one of the yeomen.
Yeah, now I want to see this. I want to see the Enterprise painted up like the Mystery Machine, and they're just flying around solving bullshit horror mysteries in space. Dude, where it's always just like a guy in a mask.
Dude, that's my show I want to make, man. That's the idea for my show. They travel around in a ship and just find bad guys, Scooby-Doo style.
Yeah,
like don't bring on a Scrappy-Doo though.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I just want to see like they. When they fought the salt vampire, they just ripped the mask off, and it's like Gary Mitchell. They're like, Gary Mitchell. He's like, I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for Captain Kirk. And okay, but anyway, there's the harpsichord starts playing, and there's a guy sitting at the harpsichord, and he's like, oh yeah, those two guys over there, referencing Kirk and Sulu, saying that they make an exquisite display pair. But he's like, oh, I suppose you guys want them back, and he just waves his hand, and Kirk and Sulu come out of their frozen state, and so they come back, and they're super confused about where they are, and the guy that was playing the harpsichord welcomes them to Gothos, which is the name of the planet. So McCoy just kind of, explains real quick to Kirk how he got there. He's like, yeah, you were on the bridge, you disappeared, which makes no fucking sense to Kirk anyway. Like, yeah, that's super helpful, guy.
You didn't really tell me anything.
Right. It's like, he's more confused than he was, a second ago. But so the guy says he couldn't resist bringing everybody there when he saw the ship passing by. So, Kirk being Kirk, he introduces himself, and the guy introduces himself as General Trelane, retired. And then he goes back to just playing the harpsichord, which I didn't know that's what that was. Like, I didn't know that's what a harpsichord sounded like. I've heard of a harpsichord. I didn't know, that was basically like a piano harp kind of thing.
I never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just a regular piano.
Yeah, the subtitles said harpsichord. So.
Yeah, I saw something that said the same thing, but I wasn't sure. I didn't think of it as a different instrument. It looked like a piano, so I just thought piano.
Yeah, so DeSalle then explains to Kirk that they can't get a hold of the Enterprise and that they're trapped on the planet. So Trelane tells them that he's really excited to have visitors from the planet, and that he's made the planet his hobby, basically. And he didn't think that, the crew of the Enterprise was capable of such voyages out to where he was. And Yeager then kind of points out, he's like, man, the time period in here is like 900 light years away from Earth. And so it's probably what he would be seeing through a high-powered viewing scope.
Which is actually scientifically accurate also.
Yeah, anything he sees is going to be, super fucking old. So, he thinks that they're still in that medieval time period. But yeah, Trelane says that, he's like, hey, I've been looking in on Earth. And Kirk is like, well, what you see is actually 900 years in the past. And Trelane is a little bit upset about that. And he's like, oh, I made a terrible time mistake here. And he's like, I really wanted you guys to feel at home when you got here. So Kirk just wants to know why they were in prison there. And Trelane's like, well, you're not really imprisoned, but, I just want to know about you and, your campaigns and your battles and your missions of conquest. And Kirk interrupts him. He says that their missions are peaceful, that they're not out for conquest, and that, when they do battle, that it's only because they don't have a choice. And Trelane just continues to explain that he wants to talk to them while McCoy is walking around, like, just doing a scan. And Trelane's like, well, you guys are one of the few predator species that actually preys on yourself. And he's super interested in that. And at this point, DeSalle's just like, fuck this, and draws his phaser. He's like, you know what?
He's like, I'll show you that you're wrong.
You want to see a predator, motherfucker? And just like draws his phaser. It's so random.
My only issue with this whole episode about to go through is it could have been solved in like 5 minutes. All they had to do, oh, you want to know about us? Let's just go through the history. I have a machine up here. I have a big ass ship. Has a computer that can tell you the entire human history that happened till today. Like,
I think he was pretty dead set on not letting them go, though. Either way,
like I don't. It's not a big secret. Like, you want to know our history for the last 900 years? Come up here real quick. Like, here you go. It's out there for everybody to see, and the whole episode ends.
But I think it was less about actually learning the history and more about him just having people to screw with. I think was his big thing.
Okay.
Well, that, and I think he was also trying to figure them out from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah, like he's just having fun interacting with another species. So yeah, DeSalle draws his phaser, and Kirk's like, no, don't do that yet, but put it on stun just in case. Which is like, they always have that trigger happy guy, and it's always the navigator
helmsman.
For some reason.
It's always the helmsman.
I guess that would make me that'd be my position. Like, I'm just gonna shoot it. No, stun it.
Yeah, like that's his solution to everything. So yeah, Trelane overhears DeSalle's name, and he just starts speaking French to him because DeSalle's a French name. And Kirk introduces the rest of the crew, and so DeSalle starts speaking German to Yeager and doing like, German stuff, like just like a German march and all this. Yeah, he's just doing German stuff. He does like a German march and all this stuff. And again, DeSalle's just like, all right, I'm getting the old phaser out. And so then Trelane just like freezes him in time and walks over and takes the phaser, and he just starts inspecting it to kind of see how it works. And then he sets it to kill. and he fires at the salt vampire and then like a really weird like bird creature he had over there and makes them both disappear. So what I was wondering is Kirk and Sulu were frozen when they got there. So is the salt vampire just frozen, or was that like a stuffed salt vampire? Like did he just vaporize this living thing? Because like they thought they killed the last one, and maybe that one was the last one.
I didn't want to say it was weird. They called Jaeger the meteorologist.
Yeah, he's their weatherman. Yep.
Yeah, he's the weatherman. I didn't even because they asked about the weather earlier. I didn't realize that, and then he said, "Oh yes, a meteorologist." Yeah, and I was like, "That's his job, a meteorologist? Like that's a thing on your ship?" I thought, I guess knowing the weather of each planet you go to might be important. Never even entered my mind thinking about there has to be a weatherman to tell you about the weather of whatever planet you visit.
Can you imagine how difficult the job is to like predict forecasts and like understand the weather of planets you've never seen?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm tripping out when I saw him described like that. I thought, who thought about that? Because that is so interesting and to me and so deep. I never even considered the weather of a planet in my entire life being different and going there. Like I never thought about you need a person who can understand the weather to be a weatherman. It's interesting.
He's probably still wrong about the weather, just like our current
every
weatherman.
time. Yeah.
First of all,
well, I mean, he was. He's like, there's 100% chance of tornadoes and volcanoes, and we didn't get any of them. So.
See, places outside Ohio, the weather's normal. Okay,
yeah.
While you're in Ohio, though, it's 21 minute and 50 later. It's an Ohio thing. Yeah. Everywhere else is normal, though. The weathermen know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Here they're like, we think it might be 70 tomorrow. Like,
our listeners are going to probably think that we have a thing against Ohio.
I do. Fuck this state.
I'm just saying, I have a thing against the weather in Ohio.
There's a reason all the memes make us out to be terrible.
Yeah. The weather?
Well, what is it? Most of our astronauts come from Ohio. So what's that say about Ohio?
They want to leave the planet.
Leave the Earth.
Yeah. The other cool thing about this scene, though, is that the weird like bird creature that he shoots is actually another thing that was briefly seen in the Cage episode, the pilot. It was very briefly seen in one of the other cages there. So they're getting some extra use out of some of this stuff, which is real cool.
This guy actually kind of seems like the Collector from the Marvel Universe.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say that earlier. When I saw them together, I thought he was like the Collector. I thought I had the same idea, too. That was a good reference, Dan.
Yeah, so Trelane's like super pumped about this phaser, and Kirk just walks up and calmly takes it back and asks Trelane if he's going to kill them. And he just explains, how he set everything up, and he says that, they being his own species, had developed a system to change matter into energy and then back into matter again. And Kirk's like, oh, that's cool. That's kind of like our transporter system. And Trelane's like, no, like that's super crude. Like our shit's way better. And he says that their system also allows them to alter the item's shape as well, or at will. So Kirk asks Trelane, he's like, hey, did you create this room by rearranging matter on the planet? And Trelane's like, hell yeah, I did. So Kirk is just like, I got more questions for you. And Trelane's like, no, we're not going to do that. And he's like, look, I just want you guys to be happy here and just like free of care. But Kirk's like, no, I really want to leave. And Trelane's like, well, all right, you can't leave.
Like, if you're not going to talk to me, I want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, Kirk's like, if you're not going to answer questions, let's, we're just going to get the hell out of here. And Trelane's like, well, here's a demonstration of my authority. And he transports Kirk to an area of the planet that is filled with, like, toxic gas. So he's, like, on his knees just choking and stuff. And then Trelane brings it back and explains, what he was transported to. And
he's like, I sent you to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah. And so Trelane, he's like, hey, you guys need to behave. And if you don't, then I'm going to be very, very angry. And I was like, it's been a little while since we've dealt with a godlike being. So I'm pretty okay with this for right now. Because remember, it was like the first 4 episodes was shit like this.
You brought it up now. I was going to bring it up at the end in my summary. No. I'm just going to say no. I'm over I think they did it smart the way to end it over that idea, but like the whole idea of all these aliens being godlike creature with all these godlike powers, it leaves the fantasy part of it to be cool or whatever, but I don't know, it's not fun for me. I
Yeah,
just
it is
don't
really
enjoy it.
weird that like all of these other species are, omnipotent, like just godlike beings, and we're just humans. Like we really got the short end of the stick, didn't we?
Yeah,
Like we kind of suck, to be honest. Like compared to all these other species that they keep finding.
I will say though, the godlike beings are very conceited and childish.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would be though, right? Like if you can do anything and
I don't
everything,
know,
like I
or
feel like
maybe
you would be that
or you can
way.
be really smart. Like maybe it's the depiction of them I haven't enjoyed. Maybe if they get some godlike creatures that are more intelligent and like above us and aren't, I don't know, childlike or like without restraint. Maybe if they had something that could do whatever they want to do but don't, that would be interesting to me.
Yeah, but then
Like,
like what would even be the point of that?
I don't know. That's the whole point. Like I just like right now, it just we're godlike powers and they just do what the hell they want to do. They did it what 5 times now they've already did it, and this is
Yeah.
or more.
I want to see a godlike being leading an army of doom, like Darkseid would, and just like conquering planets. And Kirk have to like, oh, guess I'm gonna have to beat this guy somehow. That would be cool.
Yeah,
I bet Kirk would get his ass beat.
I think it's more. There's
They've
more
actually-
interesting ways.
He was in Spock in first.
They've been super lucky in that the godlike beings that they've encountered are pretty incompetent, and Spock and Kirk have been able to pull one over on them. But
Yeah,
you
that
get like
too.
one competent being, and like
Yeah,
they're fucked.
that too.
Like, what are they gonna do?
That kind of annoys me. It's like we got these godlike creatures or whatever that seem to be unintelligent, uninspiring, and somehow they get tricked by the humans to survive.
Well, maybe their greatest weakness is underestimating, lower life forms.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that and their overconfidence. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just being me.
Yeah, so we go to commercial after that, and we come back with Spock giving a captain's log. It says that they've orbited the planet 14 times now, and they've received no word from Kirk or the landing party. And they've diverted power to their sensors and detected one small area on the surface that seems to be stable. So Scotty then asks Spock, he's like, hey, how do you explain this area? Which is a really weird question to ask. Like, why the fuck would you ask him? He don't know. But Spock's like, I don't, Mr. Scott. It simply exists. Artificial, perhaps, or a freak of nature. But the fact remains that life can exist in that area. And like, yeah, like, what else are you gonna say? Like, dude, I don't fucking know. It's it's a freak of nature, like Scott Steiner.
Spock should have been like, there's probably a godlike being down there. We've seen a few of those already.
Yeah, that's the logical answer, is that there's some kind of like god down there. But they take a second and they discuss how they should scan the area and beam up any life forms they find, which is a terrible idea. Like, you find any life form down there and you're going to bring it on the ship.
I thought it would have been funny if they brought up some crazy creature that would start wrecking the ship. Like, I thought that would be an awesome part of an episode. I thought
they bring up one of those giants from the last episode.
Yeah, something like
It just starts wrecking
that'd be a great
ship.
episode to where they transport life and they actually get the wrong person, the wrong creature or something. And then they start going through killing people in the ship. I don't know. I'm just interested in. I thought the way they did it, it'll kind of annoy me again, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
that would be pretty hilarious for them to teleport like some kind of like tarantula monster thing on board. Like, oh god, send it back, send it back.
Yeah, and so Scotty's just like, hey, Spock, are you just basically shooting in the dark here? And Spock's like, well, it's either that or we don't do anything. So we go back to the planet, and Trelane is showing off the past battle flags of various Earth factions, and he goes back to playing the harpsichord, and Sulu has a little discussion with the crew. He wants to know, he's like, hey, where do you think Trelane came from? And McCoy is like, well, what I found in my scan is pretty unbelievable. And Kirk is like, well, is Trelane alive? Which is a really, really weird thing to just ask out of the blue. He's like, was this guy even alive? And Bones is like, well, not in the way that we define life, but the scan doesn't even show that Trelane exists at all, alive or dead. Which is a pretty interesting little thing there.
I thought it was interesting. I liked it. It was that I found cool.
It would have been funny if Bones was like, we might be sharing a mass hallucination from all the toxic gas on the planet.
Yeah, they're actually just down there like suffocating to death, but they're all just hallucinating as they die. Boy, that would be a dark fucking ending to this one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it
would. So Yeager points out that the wood fire in the fireplace, that it doesn't give off any heat. And Kirk's like, well, whatever we're dealing with here, he certainly isn't all knowledgeable, and that he makes mistakes. So Trelane's still playing the harpsichord, and he turns around and he asks if they're discussing some deep-laid plans, and he says he can't wait to see the crew evolve, or the plans of the crew evolve. And Kirk then approaches him, and he's like, look, we haven't planned anything. But Trelane's like, all right, I don't believe that. And Kirk just goes on to talk about, their duty and the task that they have to perform and, how they want to get out of there. And Trelane just says that he can't let them go because he was getting bored before they came by. So, now he's got somebody to talk to and hang out with.
The one problem with that is if he can do all this, rearranging the matter, why didn't he create himself a friend to talk to?
Yeah, could have made the salt vampire come to life or something.
Well, the salt vampire doesn't really want to talk. It just wants salt.
Maybe, yeah, that's true. Maybe he didn't do it because he likes the unpredictability of the crew. Like maybe if he made people to talk to, then they would be boring.
Okay, but so guys,
that's a fair point.
Did you guys not notice something about his powers? He didn't create anything alive.
That's true. He didn't.
Yeah, he made a bunch of stuff, but nothing he created is alive. Only they're alive. So I'm assuming that he can't create life, but he can manipulate matter itself.
Yeah, that's a very fair point.
So I'm assuming that he saw people finally. He's like, oh look, people. People I've been studying, all these years. Let me bring them over here, whatever. And I want to keep them so they can entertain me because I have no idea. I can't actually create people, or he would have had a bunch of people already. You got to think about it that way. There's no way he'll be there by himself the whole damn time.
Yeah, I did not think of that.
You know what Kirk could have done? Since this guy was lonely, like, oh, hey, you're lonely? We could use a guy like you that has these kind of powers. Want to come on our ship with us and just visit all of space?
I bet Starfleet has a rule against that because they seem to have a rule against everything. They're like, no taking on godlike beings.
we don't need another Gary Mitchell.
Yeah, none of that situation, yeah. So Trelane says that the crew has to stay until it's over, and Kirk asks until, what's over? But Trelane dodges the question, and he's like, hey, just go enjoy yourself today, because tomorrow may not come at all. So Kirk just, keeps explaining, say it's classic Kirk stuff in these situations, I have a duty to the men and women on my ship, and Trelane's like, oh, there's women on that ship, all right, now we're getting somewhere.
He's like, oh, right.
He goes to do his little wrist flick to bring him down, but Kirk just grabs his arm and tells him no. He's like, no.
By the way, which is one of the most raw shit ever, by the way. He's like, I know you're a guy like powers, bro, but nah, he ain't doing that. Like that moment, I was like, it's one of them Kirk moments where I was like, okay, yeah, he's Kirk.
Yeah, those women are for Kirk and Kirk only. So yeah, Trelane just kind of throws a fit. And he's like, well, I can do anything I want. And at this point, McCoy gets a transporter signal, and he's like, Trelane's like, well, what is that? Or, what's a transporter? Or what's, the transporter signal? And Kirk's like, well, it means that the party is over, thanks to Spock. So Trelane tells them that he hasn't dismissed them yet, but they just transport out anyway, and they're just out of there. And I was like, man, there's no way that ends that easily. What if it did? They just get on the ship and leave. They just get on and leave, and that's it.
I would have threw my TV. I'd have been like, what? Did I just waste 50 minutes of my life?
They're like, sorry, it's a half episode this week, guys.
Yeah.
we couldn't think of anything else.
Hey, Kirk's off the issue a lot faster this time around. He's getting better.
Well, he really didn't do anything but just chill. Spock took care of it.
Well, see, Paul, Spock is, pulling his weight.
Wait, first of all, I did say this episode that Spock did redeem himself from last episode a lot. Not all the way, but a lot. He made some very sound judgment this time.
Yeah. So, back on the ship, Spock explains that they beamed up every life form in the area, and McCoy confirms at this point that Trelane is not a life form then, because he did not get, beamed up with them. So they rush to the bridge to try to fly away from the planet, as McCoy tries to explain to Uhura what happened, but he's just like, I really can't explain it. Which is like, why it was a stupid scene. She's like, what happened on there? And he's like, well, actually, never mind.
He could have said godlike powers.
Yeah, godlike being.
I actually thought the scene was good for. I don't know why I enjoyed the scene. I actually thought I know it was kind of useless at the same time. It clarified it was unexplainable. I know it's kind of stupid, but it's
just kind of funny that it's like she's like, what happened down there? He's like, fuck if I know.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's pretty much. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so suddenly Trelane appears on the bridge, wondering why they don't display their weapons like he does. He's like, why don't you guys have swords and shit hanging up or like phasers and stuff everywhere? He says that he's only a little bit upset with Kirk, and he wants to know which one of those people on the bridge is Spock.
Like, who the fuck is Spock?
Yeah, like, who's that son of a bitch that ruined my party? And Spock's like, that's me, I'm that son of a bitch. And Trelane's like, well, you're not even a human.
He's like, thank you.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't say that. He just, thanks. But Spock explains that his father is from the planet Vulcan, and Trelane's like, well, are Vulcans predatory? And Spock replies, not generally, but there have been exceptions. So basically,
we don't want to talk about
fuck off.
them.
Yeah. So then Trelane asks Kirk, he's like, hey, are you going to see to Spock's punishment for messing everything up? And Kirk's like, well, no, I actually commend him, in his actions. And so then Trelane's just like, well, I don't like Spock. Okay.
What was Kirk supposed to do? Send Spock to his room without pudding?
Yeah, he grabs him.
He's not getting pudding tonight.
Yeah. He grabs him, pulls him over to the captain's chair, bends him over his knee, and just spanks him. He's like, bad Spock. What do you guys think the odds are that there is fan fiction where Kirk spanks Spock?
I don't want to see that.
Probably,
if there is.
Probably 125,000%.
It's out there. It
Listen,
has to be.
Start my Star Trek people. I love you to death, but some of you guys out there are extra. There's a whole lot of, stories out there, celebrity stories, with everybody having sex. The gay version, then they got the straight version, then they got the trans version. They got all these different versions of these stories out there. They're everywhere. It is crazy.
Yeah, if you hear this and you know where to find fan fiction of Kirk spanking Spock, tweet it to us at WWST_podcast.
Just screenshot it, post it. We know it exists. And if it doesn't exist, maybe you should be the one to write it,
I'm interested in the name of science. That's all.
Oh my God. What does this show become? Oh my gosh.
It's going to be terrible when you get like 40 messages.
I hope we do. I'll read every one of them.
We're going to get censored. You're like, yo, we got to get rid of these guys. These guys are talking about wig curtain now. No. Oh my gosh.
I'd also expect Spock spanking, or I would accept Spock spanking Kirk.
Spanking Kirk.
Yeah.
Would that be logical?
Yeah.
Was spanking to be logical for Spock?
Give him the old Vulcan nerve pinch right on the butt cheek.
He took the nerve pinch on the butt cheek. No. I can't sit. I haven't been sitting down all week, man. You see Kurt in his captain chair leaning on one side. Oh my God, this show.
He's got one of those like donut things, like inflatable donut things. So Kirk demands that Trelane leaves the ship, and Trelane's like, we should go back to Gothos. And then he just transports them all back to the planet, and they're in a dining room now. DeSalle, again, tries to attack Trelane, but he gets frozen. And
man, he's a go-getter.
Yeah, he just no bullshit. He's like, I'm tired of this. I'm gonna try to shoot you twice, and I'm gonna try to attack you after that. But yeah, he gets frozen, and Kirk's like, hey, let him go. And so Trelane just lets him go. Like, no fight involved. Trelane's like, hey, don't provoke me again. You guys need to sit down, have some food, have a little bit to drink. And Trelane's like, hey, you haven't introduced me to any of the women of the crew, because he transported, a couple of women down with him. And Kirk introduces Trelane to Uhura and yeoman Teresa Ross. And Trelane goes in and tries to kiss Ross, but Kirk pulls him back. And I'm just like, is every woman on the Enterprise just stunning? Like I know we've talked about this before, but
I told you, dude.
They're all just good-looking women.
I told you, it's
a requirement.
Yeah, it's pretty bad
to be good-looking to work under Kirk.
Yeah,
he's like no uggos.
It's like every yeoman is a blue eyes and blonde hair. I told you, every yeoman.
Yeah, every one of them. Yep.
Yeah.
He has a type.
Yep.
Hey, do you think there's fan fiction of Kirk spanking the yeomans on?
There's definitely fan fiction about Kirk doing a lot of things to yeomans.
Yeah, guaranteed. So Kirk then formally introduces Trelane to Spock, and Trelane asks Spock if he realizes that he was brought there because of Kirk, and Spock just says affirmative. And so Trelane's just like, I really don't like your tone here, Spock, and it's very challenging. He's like, are you challenging me? And Spock says, and this direct quote here, because it's a fantastic quote, and this series is full of just really good shit like this. But he says, I object to you. I object to intellect without discipline. I object to power without constructive purpose. And, like, it's such a good fucking line that even Kirk is over there just, like, smirking, like, hell yeah. Like, just fucking got him. Like, it's such a relevant quote to just everything.
Yeah, I like Kirk. I like
It
Kirk
really
quote.
is.
It really is, though. It was a good quote.
Yeah. So, Trelane's in, he's like, well, I guess you have one saving grace. You're ill-mannered. He likes the fact that Spock spoke up against him. And then he's just like, well, fuck this. I'm going to go dance with Yeoman Ross. And he wants Uhura to play the harpsichord, but she says, I don't know how to play this shit. So Trelane just takes control of her hands and makes her play it.
Oh, I must have missed that.
I didn't
I
see
must
that.
have missed that part because I'm like, damn, can she play every instrument?
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know how to do this. And he's like, oh, no big deal. And just like does this little wrist wave thing. And then her hands just start playing it. And like at first she's super surprised. She's like, wow, this is really, really nutty. Then we get a couple of shots of her just like enjoying it. She's like, fuck yeah, I'm a beast at this. And it's like, it's not even her doing it.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so Trelane goes over to dance with Yeoman Ross, and Sulu gets up from the table to go talk to Kirk. And McCoy's just chilling there drinking some alcohol. He's like, shit, yeah, dude, I gotta get drunk. Like, this is amazing.
Like when in Rome.
Yeah, so he gets up and follows Sulu over, but he brings his drink with him. And Sulu's like, look, how long are we going to go along with this? And Kirk's like, well, we have to until we find a way out. And McCoy says that the food doesn't have any taste. He's like, straw would be better than the meat and water would be better than the brandy. But even though, it has no taste, he's still all about it.
Well, if the wine has no taste, does it still get you drunk, though?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is probably not, because if Trelane doesn't know the taste, he probably also doesn't know the effect that it has, right? He probably just knows like the color of it and the name of it.
I'm assuming. Let's just say I've been to houses before, and I've also ate food with no taste. It ain't great.
Yeah.
It is not great.
Yeah.
Salt is your
Season
friend,
your meat, people.
Salt
Season
is
your meat.
friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really... Well, that's why he had... Oh, that's the problem. The salt vampire sucked all the salt off all the food before he served it.
Oh, yeah. I see.
I gotta tell you, I'm real tired of going to restaurants that don't season their meat. Like, that shit's terrible.
Yeah.
And if you don't eat meat, then I guess you don't have to worry about it. That's fine. Do your thing. Yeah, so Spock says that, hey, the food might be unappetizing, but it's very logical. And McCoy is like, well, there's that magic word again. Like, he's still pissed from the Galileo 7, and he's fucking tired of hearing about logic. Like, he was just, like, instantly just kind of like, yeah, there's that word again. And he's like...
He's basically at the point, like, fuck your logic.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, does your logic find all of this fascinating? And Spock says that fascinating is a word that he uses for something that's unexpected, and that in this case, interesting would suffice. And it's just like, what a pedantic dick.
But wouldn't this
just
be
say
unexpected also?
Yeah. Just
No,
say yes.
you're
Just
not
yes,
getting
it's
it.
fascinating.
Okay. With everything going on, Spock thinks everything that's happened to us, that happened to them from this guy is logical. Even though unexpected would be something that would be against logic. Not something that's...
Well, it would be
that's,
against logic at this point.
It's not. It's not against logic. Because he knows why the food don't have taste. Because the guy has no idea that food does what he knows. He can see it all, but doesn't know anything about it. So like
if the Enterprise were to hit like a space cow, would that be interesting to Spock?
That
Or would
depends
that
on
be logical?
That depends on if the existence of space cows is known and if they frequently are run into by vehicles.
Yes.
But so Kirk then does ask if Spock finds any of what's happening unexpected, and he says no. He says that Trelane simply knows all of Earth's forms, but he doesn't know any of the substance. So that's why he just finds it interesting instead of unexpected. And Kirk's like, well, then that means that Trelane is fallible, and he can't be all-powerful, and he has to have something helping him, like maybe a machine or a device that does these things for him. So they turn to watch Trelane and Ross dance, and Trelane changes Ross's starship outfit into like a fancy dress. And then this is when we get that shot of Uhura playing the harpsichord, where she's just like, hell yeah. And Kirk notes that Trelane never wanders from the mirror on the wall, musing that, maybe it's part of an ego thing, like he just likes to see himself in the mirror. And Spock is like, well, is it his ego or is it something else? Which is one of those things I hate about Spock. Like, is it something else? Just fucking say what you think it is, dude. But they talk about the mirror for a second, and they wonder what kind of machine could do what Trelane is doing. And Kirk wonders if a machine could be, doing everything. And if it is, maybe it could be kept in the house somewhere. But Spock doesn't think so, and he thinks that a device capable of doing all of that would have to be absolutely huge, and Kirk agrees with that. So Kirk just is like, hey, maybe we can solve, this problem at the source. And he turns, the source being Trelane. So he turns and loudly tells the crew that Trelane's actions are those of an immature, unbalanced mind. He just says it really loudly. And Trelane just quits dancing, and he's like, hey, I heard that. And, I'm going to have to dispense with you. And so Kirk tells him that he's like, hey, you only heard part of that. And I want you to leave my crew alone, and stop dancing with the women because I don't like it. And he goes and pulls Ross away.
That's my woman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he pulls Ross away and says that he doesn't want her, accepting Trelane's gifts. And he takes her, pulls one of the gloves off her hand and takes this little hat thing she has off.
She kind of looked upset about that.
Yeah, she was having the time of her life.
Yeah, she was about to be, oh my God, I'm so car captain. It put her off. And he didn't apologize about it either. He was rude.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, she's over there man, I could get used to this. If I stay with this dude, I could have anything I ever wanted.
Yeah, he was.
I might not be able to eat good food and drink wine, but
yeah,
all the fancy clothes I want.
So Trelane's like, look, you're just jealous, and they argue back and forth for a second, and Trelane is like, hey, you fight for attention and admiration and for the possession of women. And Kirk's like, well, hey, if it's fighting you wants, then, you're going to get it. And he just slaps Trelane across the face with a glove, to challenge him with a duel.
Which was great.
The slap sound is fucking amazing. But
I actually wanted him to do it a few times to give him a little slappy slap.
A little back and forth slap, yeah.
Yeah.
But Trelane no-sold it. He didn't react at all. He's just like, all right. But then he gets super pumped, and he runs over and grabs this box that has two 1800s dueling pistols,
which I wanted Sulu to geek out over,
right? To be like, oh man, I don't have one of those in my collection either. But yeah, he gives one to Kirk, and he's like, yeah, just to let you know, I never miss. So they go to the commercial break, and they come back, and we get the first delayed captain's log that we've had. It's just Kirk explaining the situation, and he's talking about how he has a field of honor gambit. And, he's just looking over the 1800s pistol, and Trelane is still super excited to duel, and, they're getting ready. And then he stops and he's like, hey, since I was the one that was challenged, then I get to shoot first. And Kirk says, no, we got to shoot at the same time. And Trelane's like, no, it's my game, my rules. And then he points the gun over to Spock in an attempt to persuade Kirk. So it works. Kirk's like, all right, you can shoot first.
Kirk should have been like, shoot him. He's indestructible.
Yeah, nothing could stop this guy anyway. So, yeah, Kirk relents, and he's like, yeah, you can shoot first. And Trelane takes aim, and then he just pulls his gun back, aims it up at the ceiling and just fires into the ceiling. And he's like, hey, now my fate is in your hands. So Kirk aims at Trelane, and then at the last second, he pulls his gun over and he shoots the mirror. And he breaks the mirror and destroys the machine that was behind the mirror. And Trelane's like, oh, man, you ruined everything. So DeSalle's like, hey, the subspace interference is clearing and we can get out of here. And so Kirk's like, all right, try to get a hold of the ship. So Trelane is just upset at Kirk and is surprised. He's like, hey, I'm really surprised, at the treachery of your species.
Well, what's funny about that is he's mad that Kirk shot the mirror instead of him.
Yeah. And he thinks that he was betrayed somehow, but he's like, this is the kind of shit that he wanted for them. Yeah, this is the whole reason he brought them down was for shit like that.
Yeah,
just the randomness of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. This part is interesting. So to me, it's kind of dull, honestly. It's just a whole lot of random ass dialogue for 5 or 10 minutes that could have been cut to 3 minutes to me. And it just drags on.
Yeah, not a whole lot of direction here.
No. Drags on. I find it, go ahead. You're good.
Yeah, so Kirk tells Trelane, he's like, hey, everything's over. It's it's all over. We're done here. And Trelane tells him to go back to their ship and prepare because they're all dead, especially you, Kirk. And he runs towards the mirror and he just disappears. So Kirk calls the Enterprise and, gets them all beamed on board. And then they go back to the ship and they're back on their course to deliver the supplies. And getting ready.
Go.
Yeah, and they're getting ready to use emergency warp to leave the planet's influence. And they talk about trying to send a signal to, report the events to the Starfleet. But Kirk's like, well, let's wait until we leave the system. That way we can hopefully be out of whatever Trelane's range is. And
it's not very often Kirk's like, I want to get the fuck away from this situation.
Yeah, and like, why wait? You have 400 people on board the Enterprise. One of them can file the report while you worry about this. It's not like you got to sit and do it. But Yeoman Ross approaches Kirk and takes his the data pad that he has, and she's like, "Hey, can I go and change out of this dress now?" And he's like, "Oh yeah."
He's like, no.
Yeah, no, you gotta. That's now regular Starfleet uniform for males and females. It's that fancy dress.
Get out of here.
Fan fictions.
Spock's like, no, that's not logical.
Yeah, so he tells her to turn in her glass slippers because the ball is over. And she leaves the bridge, and Kirk kind of smirks, and he says something weird. He's like, he mutters to himself. He's like, "Oh, it's hard to believe that never happened. Like the what never happened? That he didn't sleep with her." But he has this really weird, goofy ass
he almost
smile.
Bites his lip he's like, "Oh, I'm trying to resist."
Yeah, he has a really goofy smile that I feel like was more Shatner than Kirk. I feel like that line was Shatner and not Kirk.
Oh, like it is
I can't
improv or something?
Yeah, well, that, Shatner wanted him some of that girl. But, yeah, so DeSalle announces that there's a large body ahead of them, and they look on the screen to see that it's the planet that they just left behind. And they're on a collision course with that planet, so Kirk orders them to evade, and they narrowly avoid hitting the planet, and then it appears in front of them again, and they narrowly avoid hitting it again, and it just shows up again. And they do this a couple of times until Kirk is finally like, okay, let's enter the planet's orbit and prepare the transport room so I can go back down to the surface.
You notice Kirk didn't give the crew of the Enterprise a heads up, oh, hey, if you're doing anything important, you might want to stop because we're going to be taking sharp turns.
Yeah, it's another one of those things where 99% of the ship has no fucking clue what's going on.
You're eating, dinner and you stab yourself in the face with a fork because all of a sudden the ship went sideways.
Yeah, several times, back and forth too.
Okay, that was something I never thought about before. You sitting there eating and all of a sudden the ship just starts sliding over. Yeah, all your food falls down. Man, I'll be want to fight somebody. I'll be coming to the bridge like, yo.
Well, also they're gonna make you clean that up, even though that was your fault.
I just spent 2 hours slaving on this meal, man. 2 hours slaving on this nice meal that I was about to eat, and you had to go do this right now. Oh man, I'll be fighting.
Well, yeah, you might get jolted out of bed when you're, when shit's going on like that.
It's like a cartoon, and you go to stab your fork into a piece of food, but the plate slides to the other side of the table, so you move down there and try to get it, and it slides back to the other side.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so McCoy is protesting Kirk going back down to the planet, but Kirk's, he's determined to go, and he says that if they don't hear anything from him in an hour, to just leave the area immediately. But he knows full well they can't just leave because they literally just experienced that. So he beams down, and he ends up in a dark room, and from behind he hears Trelane tell him to approach the bench, and Trelane is dressed like a judge, and they're in a courtroom kind of mock-up. So Trelane tells Kirk, he's like, hey, if you try to do anything, it's going to be used against you in the court. And then a light shines on the wall behind Kirk, and there's a silhouette of a noose there. And Trelane goes on to say, he's like, hey, my instrumentality is unbreakable this time. So I guess that means the machine, he has a backup one, and that, it can't be broken. So Kirk, he tells Trelane, he's like, look, I've had enough of these games. And Trelane's like, that's, you inferior beings are just really absurd. And he tells Kirk that the charges against him include treason against his superior authority and conspiracy and an attempted insurrection. And he asks Kirk how he pleads.
What a bunch of bullshit. He's just I'm mad at you.
Also, he said against the superior authority. Who say you're the superior authority?
He is. He's godlike being.
But he hasn't actually said it. I'm superior authority. So technically he hasn't broken any kind of.
Yeah, he didn't identify himself as a cop.
He said he identified himself as the superior person, being technically I didn't do nothing wrong here. You never said what you were.
Yeah,
dude, you abducted me.
Well, on that note, I'm surprised he didn't hit him for resisting arrest and speeding in the ship trying to get away. And none of them had seatbelts on that bridge. So just slap him with every bit of it. It's can I see the insurance policy for the Enterprise, please?
Why is there no seatbelts on the bridge? Now that you bring that up, it doesn't make sense. Not seatbelts, but straps to keep you in. Seatbelts.
Yeah, I was gonna say because there's really no chairs
or anything.
Yeah.
Because anytime something happens, they turn the ship and then everybody's falling over. If we try to stuff guys in or something, that might work better. I don't know.
Which, to our earlier point, there would have to be more than one doctor on board. Because you'd imagine people are getting hurt left and right.
Yeah.
Even when they turn, they're not telling nobody. 30-degree turn.
Yeah.
Not telling nobody. Boom. So there's got to be more than one doctor. Has to be.
Yeah. So he asks Kirk how he pleads, and Kirk says that he hasn't come to plead and that he's just there to get his ship back. And he argues that, he's the one that led his crew, and, he wants Trelane to let the other ones go because it was him that was making all the decisions, and, he's the one that broke the machine. So Trelane is like, hey, do you think that was the only machine? And Kirk's like, well, I took that chance, and I'm willing to pay the price for being wrong for that. So Trelane's like, all right, so you admit to the charges. And Kirk's like, yeah, I do. And I just want the Enterprise to be able to continue its journey. And like he yells this out. He's like, yeah, I'm guilty. Just let them go. So Kirk then just like starts to insult Trelane. And Trelane's like, all right, you're guilty on all counts, and I'm sentencing you to hang until you're dead. Which
would be weird if he didn't. If he just hung him not to be dead. Like, I'm going to hang you for 20 seconds.
That's always been the saying, is like, even in Old West movies, they're like, yeah, you're sentenced to hang until you're dead. So did they have an instance one point where they hung somebody and they didn't die and they had to let them go because they'd already been hanged, but they didn't die from it? And they're like, damn it, like we gotta fix that loophole.
Actually, yes. I believe there's a thing, if they hang you and the thing breaks, you get to go or something.
Oh.
Like I think it's some old thing I read a long time ago, and they were saying sometimes that's why the news has evolved over all these years, like hanging, because at one point, like certain people the ropes would break or the tree would break or whatever, they hung them on. They're like, oh, they must not supposed to live, so they would let them live.
And then they were already hanged that once, so they can't do it again.
They can't do it again.
Huh.
Yeah, so I think they say hang to your death because if the thing breaks, they can just do it again until you die.
Okay, well, I mean, that makes sense, but yeah.
I don't know if it's really not just coming up with some kind of thing I read one day.
No, I think you're right, because I think I remember hearing a story, someone surviving an electric chair, and they're like, well, he survived it, so, from their point of view, God doesn't want him dead, so send him back to prison.
Well, we didn't go back to prison, but we did go back to the Enterprise. You like that segue? And Spock's giving a captain's log and says that their hour of waiting time is almost up and that they're going to have to leave pretty soon. And we go back to the planet, and Trelane's talking about, he didn't think it was possible, but he actually experienced some genuine rage when dealing with Kirk. And he says that the experiment that he was conducting was successful. And Kirk is like, he gets really sarcastic, and he's like, well, I'm glad you weren't disappointed. And
if he was trying to if the experiment worked, why are they being hung for something that he wanted to experience?
Yeah, that's what I didn't get about this entire episode. But at this point, I was like, man, this better not be the part where Trelane's like, yeah, it was all just a big experiment, and none of it really mattered, and you can go home. Well, but thankfully, that's not what happened. So Trelane's like, hey, do you have any last requests? And Kirk, he's like, well, I don't, but I can tell you I'm not putting my head in that noose. And Trelane's like, well, you don't really have a choice, and makes the rope start to move over towards Kirk. Trelane just comments, he's like, this whole thing is really tiresome and really easy. And Kirk's like, well, that's your problem, is that everything that is easy, it's all easy for you. And you don't ever think about anything, so you miss opportunities. He's like, you really enjoyed the anger that you felt, but you could have accomplished it without me. And, you're a bumbling, inept fool. So he tells Trelane that, he has an opportunity to experience something unique and that he's wasting it on a simple hanging, and, asks him where the sport is in that.
Kirk's trash talk is pretty good here.
Well, it's very clever. Like, he using his mind, realizing that this guy, he just wants to experience new things. It's not that he's evil. It's not that the person is bad. They just want new experience or whatever. And the issue is they don't like being told no. And also he can't be told no because he can do what the hell he wants to do.
Right.
So I think it's very, I like Kurt's plan of attack this time was just a real good idea. I thought it was done very smart.
Yeah, and then so Kirk says a line here that makes me question the 44 deaths on board the Enterprise so far, because he's like, hey, you could experience the terror and the suspense and the fun of murder. I'm just like, is Kirk a mass murderer? Did he take pleasure in the 44 people of his crew dying? He's like,
well,
yeah,
they weren't any of
murder's
his.
fun.
No. They weren't any of his friends.
Yeah.
Or the co-workers.
Yeah, he's like, I know
they were all
firsthand. Yeah, I know firsthand what it's like to take a life, and it's, suspenseful, and it's really fun. He's just he's a murderer. But
nobody's perfect.
yeah, I think there's a far cry between perfect and murdering 44 people, but so Trelane, he seems pretty interested, and he's like, well, what do you suggest? And Kirk's like, well, how about like a personal conflict, unlike the duel, and this will be higher stakes because the stakes are going to be my life. So Trelane just gets pumped, and he goes and grabs this sword from a table, which I didn't even see a sword there. Like, why the fuck is a sword there in your courtroom table? But Kirk's like, hell yeah, like that's the idea. And Trelane's like, dude, I'm digging this. So he goes to swing the sword, but Kirk just grabs his wrist, and he's like, no, like we can do better than this. Like, there's not enough sport in just killing me with a sword. And so Trelane's like, you're right. We should do a royal hunt. And he says that Kirk can go hide anywhere in the forest. And Kirk's like, yes, I'm that sounds great to me. And he's like, you're going to have to make it worth my while. And then I'm just like, oh, this is just, it's the most dangerous game is what they're doing. Kirk hiding in the forest, getting hunted.
Yeah.
It's the most dangerous game.
Yeah, but I've seen a bunch of a couple movies like that too.
Yeah. Kirk is like, hey, we have to up the stakes. He says that he wants his ship to be free and that he'll give Trelane a contest that he can remember. And Trelane's like, all right, hell yeah, like, let's do that. And then he just transports Kirk outside the building. But if you want to, like, up the stakes for Trelane, why not just be like, hey, during this whole thing, you can't use your powers. Like, it'll be really interesting because we'll be on a level playing field. But instead, he's just like, how about we just he's just like, just let my ship go and, I'll try to make this interesting for you.
I agree. I think it was a simple way to do it.
Yeah, so he gets transported outside, and he tries to contact the ship to tell him to leave, but he can't get through. And then Trelane just pops up and attacks him with a sword. So I feel like he did not count to 100. Like, he didn't say he was going to, but I mean, he gotta give the guy some time, right?
He didn't even give him enough time to hide.
Yeah, gives him like 15 seconds and comes out swinging. So they have a little chase, and Kirk gets away. He's still trying to contact the ship, and Trelane's still chasing him around. They do this for a little bit, and Kirk finally catches Trelane off guard and knocks the sword away from him. And Kirk picks up the sword, he swings at Trelane, and Trelane just vanishes. And then he reappears back where he was. So, like, that, if they'd agreed not to use the powers, like, that could have been it.
Yeah.
But Trelane congratulates Kirk on scoring first. And he's like, man, I've never played this game before. And so Kirk just, like, gets pissed and throws the sword. Because, what point is it if he's never going to be able to actually hit him with it? And Trelane just materializes another sword in his hand and starts swinging at Kirk. And Kirk just, like, ducks and runs away. And they, Trelane chases him for a little bit, and Kirk grabs this tree branch. And they start fighting back and forth until the tree branch break. Like, Kirk gets in some solid hits, though. Like, beats the fuck out of him with that tree branch. And he breaks it over him, and then, or, like, breaks it against the sword, and then he runs away. And he ended up doing, like, he swung on the tree and, like, kicked him and knocked him down. So yeah, he makes his way back up to the front door and tries to go in, but it's locked. And he tries his communicator again, but he can't get through. And then Trelane shows up and like materializes some basically like just like
cage.
Barred walls. Yeah, like barred walls on either side of him, and traps Kirk. And he runs up to Kirk, and Kirk's like, hey, remember your promise. You said you were going to let the Enterprise go. And Trelane's like, well, this is really fun, so I really want to bring everybody from there back to here. We can do the same thing. So Trelane's like, all right, kneel down because I'm going to kill you now. And Kirk refuses to do that. And he's like, is your, if I'm not cooperating you won, but you didn't beat me. And he's like, is your victory still as sweet? He's like, I'm not defeated. And then he takes the sword from Trelane and he just snaps it in two over his knee. Like, what an absolute
how strong
badass.
is Kirk? Gee.
He's a badass, bro. That was the moment I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
just fucking breaks it.
Like, oh, he's strong.
Like, all right, dude.
Don't piss Kirk off.
Yeah. And he tells Trelane that, he's like, hey, you have a lot to learn about winning, and you have a lot to learn about everything. And then he fucking slaps him and backhands him. He
Yeah.
just slaps the shit out of him.
Why? Oh, that's disrespectful. We gotta fight after that.
Yeah, he's like, you got a lot to learn. And
Like,
just
oh,
fucking slaps him.
I gotta kick you right in the nuts. We gotta fight. Like, we gotta really fight. You slap me. It's not the front slap. It's the backhand.
Yeah, the backhand.
The front slap
and the
was like,
sound effect is so good.
yeah,
the sound effect got
the first
me.
slap was like, oh, you think something. The backhand was like, you call me a what now? Like, oh, okay.
He's in beast mode right now.
Yeah, for real.
It's so out of nowhere. Just fucking slaps him. It's been a while since we've had a good slap in this show, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, Trelane just like loses his shit, and he's like, "Hey, you cheated," and he's like, "I'm gonna show you." And then they get interrupted by a woman's voice calling out to Trelane. And in the sky, 2 big old green blobs appear, and a light shines on Trelane like a spotlight. So Trelane tells the blobs, he's like, "Hey, you promised that I could have this planet for myself." And then a male voice is like, "Yeah, but you've gone far enough." And then Trelane starts complaining that they always stop him when he's having fun. And I'm like, he's a fucking child. Like, this whole thing was him. Just he's like a literal child.
Now, I want to bring up. Didn't they do a parody of this in Futurama?
Probably. I've been through all of Futurama a couple times, and I feel like there was something like this. Yeah.
Like, I want to say, I think they brought the Star Trek cast on that episode where, like, they gave like the bodies back, but it ended up being like a godlike child.
Yeah, and they had a big fight. Yep. And
like the parents, quote unquote, came in at the end.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that episode now because I'll understand it with this context. Yeah, I think you're right.
Wrong.
No, I think you're right on that. I remember that episode because it was like some kind of convention, and Nichelle Nichols, came back for her role as Uhura, and I think she mentioned something about like they got confused about the Star Trek Wars and the Star Wars Trek, which was pretty solid.
Oh yeah,
yep. But yeah, so the floaty male voice says that Trelane has been disobedient and cruel, and then the woman tells him that it's time for him to come in, and I'm just, yeah, he's a fucking kid. So Trelane protests, and he's like, "I'm a general, and I don't have to listen to you." And the male voice insists, and Trelane's still just crying about it. And the voices tell him that if he can't take proper care of his pets, then he's not allowed to have them at all. And they tell him that the beings that he has are their spirit is superior, like they have spirit, and that they are superior, and that he'll understand one day when he grows up. So Trelane just starts crying that he never gets to have any fun, and the voices threaten to not allow him to make any more planets. Like they're just they're treating him like a kid.
It's such a big thing that I took in my head. They said, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, little son. You don't have to make any more planets. Make any more planets? Like that's a whole lot of power. Like to be able to make like I just put that reference. I thought all these little kids that have their own planet. Like that's your toy. Like go in the room, son.
If he can make planets, what can his parents do?
That's right? That's like, oh man, go in there and go play with the planet. All right, mom, whatever. I'm tired of playing with this planet every day. Same thing, I want to play with something else.
There's always volcanoes and tornadoes going off.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that they were talking about his power that way.
Yeah, he wants to make a new planet, and she's like, "No, we have planet at home."
Yeah.
it's just like shit planet
that you don't play with.
Yeah,
Planet Earth.
Yeah. So so Trelane's like just crying and saying about talking about how he was winning, and they're like, "No, you got to come home," and then he just disappears, and the voices then apologize for the events, and they say that they're gonna maintain Kirk's life support systems while he returns to his ship. So he calls the Enterprise and tells Spock to beam him up, and then we go to a little bit later on the bridge, and they're preparing to approach Beta Colony 6, and Spock and Kirk wonder how to classify Trelane in their report. And they're like, would he be pure mentality or force of intellect or embodied energy, or is he a super being? So like they have a classification for these. They've done this enough that super being is a classification.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Kirk's like, how about we use God of War? And I feel like Kratos would object to that and would definitely go hunting.
That's what I thought also.
Kratos, no.
Yeah, like once he's done with the Norse gods, he just goes like gets a fucking spaceship and
Starts
goes
his
out on the
strategy
other one.
first.
Get the space. It was us hunting through space for regular gods. Charlie X.
Yeah, he's a Charlie.
Charlie
Just like
X.
goes,
Kratos, you will die. I'm Charlie X. Oh my gosh.
Someone needs to make the fan art of that now.
yeah. Oh god, just like Kratos impaling Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie has that stupid fucking look on his face.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I like
so Spock says that he doesn't find the God of War title fitting, and Kirk's like, well, maybe we classify him as a small boy and a very naughty one at that. And this is a fucking fan fiction waiting. It's fan fiction. And he also says that Trelane was probably doing things comparable to the things that Spock would have done as a child, like dipping little girls' curls in inkwells or stealing
Wow.
apples from the neighbors' trees.
Oh,
Yeah, dude, that's fucked up.
The first one was uncalled for, sir. Dipping little girls' pigtails in inkwells? You monster.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, that's real messed
You are
up.
a serial killer, bro. Oh my. I was.
And was that a thing at any point in history?
Yeah, and like that's what I'm like. When the
Yeah.
fuck did Kirk grow up in the 1800s?
Yeah, using inkwells?
Yeah.
I'll let that comment go. I thought I get what you're saying though.
Yeah, so he's talking about those kinds of things, and he gets interrupted by just the look that Spock gives him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I guess I should have known better." And then Spock walks away, but he like pauses and turns back and gives like the people's eyebrow because he's like, "What the fuck was that?" It's just he didn't even ask. Like that's one that he ain't even gonna touch. Like if you have Spock not curious about that shit, then you probably should just shut the fuck
No,
up for a second.
Spock was like, "Oh my god, this guy's a monster. He's the
Yeah.
little girl's hairs, pigtails, and inkwells. What in the world?"
He's like, Kirk is insane. You think I could have him classified as insane so I can run the ship?
Yeah.
He's like, I just leave people behind. You dip girls with pigtails and inkwells.
Yeah.
Did that used to happen? I wonder if that happened in school. I need to find somebody older who used to inkwells. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know when they stopped using those. I don't know if it's impossible.
Yeah, do we even know anybody that used an inkwell at this point?
Well, what's 100 years ago? Is that far back far enough? I don't know.
I don't think I know anybody that used
Now I'm curious.
inkwells.
She was like, "Oh yeah, back when I was in kindergarten, little boys used to think our pigtails and inkwells." What?
Yeah, and
Like-
that was when they had to walk uphill both ways to go to school too.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, that's it. We just we presume they delivered the supplies and all's well that ends well. And Dan, we'll start with you. How do you feel about this?
For the most part, I thought it was a fun episode. I didn't mind having, the godlike being came back, formula. Yeah, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. Not too many complaints.
Yeah, I was actually kind of bored with this one, to be honest with you. I just like it wasn't a terrible episode. Just kind of it seemed like it didn't really have a lot of direction in the beginning, and I don't know, just like it kind of felt like it was one of those like they were making it up as they went along, like they did with Shore Leave. But yeah, it wasn't terrible. Wasn't anything great. Godlike being blah blah blah. Kirk gets saved at the last second. He doesn't actually do anything of substance in this episode. Like he just kind of exists. Like yeah, he destroyed the machine, but at the end of the day, like that didn't mean anything, and he lucked his way into another victory. And
no one died.
Yeah, and nobody died. And like I said, not terrible, not great, but it's not Mud's Women. So I will trash that episode every time I get the chance. And yeah, that's it. Paul?
I like to say the writing of this episode was terrible. Whoever written this episode, it was the pacing was off, the story was off, everything about it was the writing was terrible. Because I like to write, so I look into that. The look and design of this episode was good. Like it looked good, it looked cool, everything looked awesome. It's just I don't know what they're doing this episode. I don't get it. Like there were like there's really good parts random here and there. Like the ending with him being a kid. Like that actually was kind of cool. I was like, oh yeah, it's like his parents like, yo, bring come in the house. You've been out to act on a fool. Like I got that reference or whatever. But overall, I just thought, I don't know. It wasn't very like I want to say it was like a 1, but I know it wasn't that bad. And I want to say it was average because I got through it. But there were a whole section of just bored. I was like, oh, this is really, really boring.
Yeah.
And for an episode that in the first 5 minutes I was hooked by the way they just disappeared, I was hooked. And then as the story went along, I thought, man, this is not what I expected. I thought it would be better. Particularly after the last couple episodes, they've been really, really good. So this one kind of I didn't love it. It's again.
Yeah, it really dragged in the middle.
Yeah.
And like, what was the purpose of, writing Sulu or DeSalle into this episode when neither one of them really did anything at all?
Yeah, they didn't even die. Like, if they died,
Yeah.
I would have accepted it more.
Yeah, they did nothing.
Like,
So they should have ended it when he first escaped the first time.
Yeah, just fly away. Just like real quick,
honestly,
like 15-minute episode.
If they could have dragged it out longer and that been the ending, like they found a way to do it, and it like still them to take off, I could accept that maybe.
So they escaped the first time, then the rest of the episode is them dropping off the parts.
Or them being chased or
Yeah.
something. Like something more interesting. Like with the planet chasing them the whole time. They're trying to escape from the planet because the planet's chasing them. That's something cool episode to me. Like a planet that has all these powers chasing them. Like that's something interesting to me. But like just like and that was the cool part of the episode. I thought, oh, that's really cool. The planet trying to chase them down. But it was in between a bunch of crap. There's a whole lot of crap in there. Yeah.
Can you imagine? They go to escape and they fly out of like the influence of Trelane, and then just nothing happens, and like Kirk just looks at Spock, and Spock look back at him, and Kirk's like, "That's it? All right, yeah, that's it." And then they just fly away, like, and then that's all. Like that's the end of the episode. Like they don't expect it to stop there, but it just does.
Yeah, I thought it was more interesting. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah,
I'm not sure it's going on, but yeah, it is a 5, 6, 7, somewhere in the lame section. Somewhere right in the middle. I got through it.
yeah. So yeah, next one we're gonna hit is season 1, episode 18, called Arena, which
I'm so excited.
Sounds
bro,
interesting
because it says arena, and I read the sentence synopsis. It says Kirk is pitted in a barehanded duel with a Gorn. If Kirk is fighting somebody barehanded, I am excited.
Yeah,
I don't know what a
he's
Gorn
gonna
is.
slap the fuck out of them.
Dude, I don't know what a Gorn is, but I do know that Kirk will be fighting somebody in a pit, and it's called Arena. This next episode is going to be so great, because anytime Kirk is fighting, the episodes are like really fighting and grimy. The episodes are always amazing. So I'm excited for the next episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna be it for this one. As always, Twitter at WWST_podcast. We'll make sure Paul reads any of the fan fiction that you send his way.
I will actually, guys. Just so you know, I read a lot. So if you have a story with a link, I'll read it. I'll give my opinion. I like reading.
Yeah. Gmail is wwstpod@gmail.com. And obviously, you can find us wherever you found us to hear us right this second, and also pretty much everywhere else. So, yeah, if you guys don't have anything else, then I think that's going to be it.
Latest, Gators.
Later.